It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.
Hello and welcome to the podcast Suicide Sucks. And yet again, we have gone international and we are talking to Kisha from Virginia. Now, Kisha is the founder of the non-profit organisation called Cook's Creed Foundation, which we'll find out a little more about later. But before we get into that, Kisha is going to deep dive into her experience with suicide. And she has experienced it from both sides as a survivor of attempted suicide and also experiencing the loss of a loved one through suicide as well. So, Kisha, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you. I'm so excited.
And as you know, I'm going to go straight into that first question, which is I want to know what your darkest day has been.
My darkest day. It's kind of weird because I feel like I can remember vividly, um, as if I was there at this very moment. I know exactly what I was wearing, what everything smells like, what I look like. It's so detailed, I think, for me, um, that um, yeah, it's hard to think of it as a dark day, but it definitely was. Um, I can remember on that particular day, I was at home and I was living in a one bedroom apartment. Because leading up to that particular day, um, it was interesting. So a little backstory before I actually get to that day.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I was in a long-term relationship with someone for over 5 years, and we were planning to get married within 3 months. I remember. I had bought my wedding dress. I had paid for the venue. I had did everything that was supposed to happen on a first bride, first wedding, pretty much. Um, and I found out maybe 2 to 3 weeks actually before this day, that he was cheating with someone else and had been for over a year and a half. And I didn't know. And I was extremely distraught because I'm just like, I just paid for all these things. My wedding is in 3 months. Like, what is going on? Um, and he decided that he didn't want to get married, and he basically left with everything. And the only thing I had pretty much was my clothes. And he took everything out of my house. He took the car. He took everything. So I kind of had to restart again. And it was just a struggle because I'm just like, my whole life just kind of fell apart pretty much. And so on this particular day, it was a Friday. I was just like, I can't handle all of this that's happening. Um, the love of my life is gone. He took everything from me. He took my bank account and all my money, took my car, like he took everything. Um, and I didn't know what to do at all. And so I decided this is not what I wanted. This is not where I was going to be. I had no idea what I was going to do next. And I kind of felt like, um, maybe it's better for me just to not be here and just kind of get it over with, pretty much. Um, so I remember I decided, um, that I was going to take my own life. And I kind of had it planned out, um, a little bit. I knew that I wanted to, in really, in a really dark place and in pain, because I didn't know what to do with the rest of my life. I thought I had my life planned. Um, and so I wrote a note to her. I wrote a note to my sister. I wrote a note to one of my best friends at the time, and just kind of told them I don't know what to do. I don't know what to do. So after I wrote the notes, I folded them up, I put them on my dresser. Um, and I was kind of standing there for a moment because I'm just like, when you're kind of there at, I call it like the abyss. Like you're standing there at the abyss darkness, and it's kind of like you have a point where there's kind of like no thought, just it's kind of like I'm just going to take this action. I don't care what's happening. I don't care who it's going to hurt. I don't care what's going to happen after this. I just know that at this particular point, I have this pain and I need to get rid of this pain. Um, and so I stood there for a moment. I walked into the bathroom and I cried because I was just like, I can't believe I'm at this point. um, one. And it was at that particular moment my phone rang, just random, because nobody had called me in a couple of days. Nobody had sent me no emails. Nobody had came by. Nothing. And my phone rang at that particular moment, and something just said, "Pick up the phone." And it was my mom, of all people. Um, and she asked me, "What are you doing right now?" And I didn't want to tell her because I was just like,
God.
this is going to break her heart if I tell her that I was thinking of suicide. Um, and I was like, I told her I was thinking, I was like, I'm not doing anything. I'm just sitting here right now. And she's like, I'm gonna come by and pick you up because I want you to go out with me to dinner. I'm like, what? Like, I'm gonna come by, get you. I want you to go to dinner with me. And I just kind of thought, like, okay, is this is this a joke? Like, I was in this dark place and was standing there ready to to commit suicide, and I get this random phone call from my mother, who I hadn't talked to in days, actually. And she came by and she picked me up, and I never told her what the details were, what was happening, nothing. And we went out to dinner. It was just a random. And I feel like at that particular moment, I truly believe like she saved me at that moment. I really do believe she saved me. Um, because I was all set to do it. I had written out everything to everybody, what I wanted to leave to everybody. Like I had all in detail. Um, and she saved me. I don't know any other way to put it, but she saved me. Um, after that day, I after that dinner, I came home. I took my notes and I actually put them in a box. I put my wedding dress away. Um, and just kind of sat with my thoughts a little bit. I'm just like, like what what do I do next? Like I didn't go through with this and I was standing there ready to do this at this particular moment and she saved me. So what do I do now? And so that's when I kind of thought, okay, I really need some help. Like I really need some help to kind of work some things out, figure out like, let's get to where this is coming from. Let's get to where this all came about. Like, how did I get here? This place. Um, so that's when I started therapy. And this was back in 2004, which is so crazy. Because I was like, I had just graduated high school, like all the things, actually. Um, yeah. And so I did extensive therapy work for years. Um, I
And did
mean,
you
everything.
did
Oh,
you
go ahead.
whilst from that night, were these notes still in your box? Were they still always there?
It was
Yeah.
still always there. Still always there. Because I think I've always had something kind of like in the back of my mind, um, that this might come back. And I'm not sure what to do, but I want to be prepared if this comes back. Um, and I know that's probably kind of weird to kind of think about it that way. Because I guess you kind of think about it, okay, well, I've been at this particular point before. Who's to say that I can't go back here again or be back at this particular place again? And who's say it that this next time it might not, it might actually happen, you know? So I kept the notes as one as a reminder, I think, of where I was, but also at a place where, like, yeah, this could be, I could be at this place again. Um,
Yeah,
so yeah, I
some
think,
people that I've spoken to have kind of said that it's almost like it, it sounds odd, but it's like a comfort blanket,
yeah,
knowing that you've still got that option there.
yeah,
However, yeah.
yeah. And it does sound very dark, but um, yeah, and it's crazy because I was at that place again. Um, I would say maybe 8 to 9 years later, I was at that place again.
And was this
Um,
really, were you still having therapy then?
yes,
And
I
did
was
you
still
did
having,
you address all this with the
yeah,
therapy? Yeah.
and yeah. So I had did years of therapy, where I was going twice a week to therapy. I was seeing a psychiatrist at the time for medication, and as we know, like medication can be a little iffy. I mean, you have to try a number of different things to get the right kind of cocktail that works for specifically for you and what your needs are. And that can be really tough sometimes because I know for me, I went through a number of different medications um, to figure out what was really going on, what's happening. And there was plenty of times where the medication just wasn't working. There was plenty of times where I felt like I was just numb and I was just there. There was plenty of times where I was spaced out there. It's just so difficult kind of knowing what works and what doesn't work. And sometimes you got to go through a number of things to get to that place where like, okay, this particular cocktail works for me. Like I feel better with this. Um, but in that whole transition, I definitely was back at that place again. It
Did you, sorry to
No,
interrupt.
you're good.
Did you, this is probably a really weird question, but did you get those letters out or did you rewrite them? If this is like 9 years later.
Yeah, I didn't get those particular letters out, but I rewrote new ones because there was different people in my life at that
Yeah.
time. And it's kind of now it's right crazy because I think years later, once I went back and because I kept everything and I kind of went back and read it, like I kind of said the same thing in the letters, which was kind of strange. But yeah, I had rewrote the letters, and I just remember one night I was just kind of thinking like I can't do this. Like I don't feel like myself. I don't feel anything actually. Um, and with going through therapy and some other hardships in my life, I just at that particular point I was just like I don't know. There's just no reason for me to really be here. I don't really have a purpose. Like I um had a couple of relationships that just didn't work out. I've had two miscarriages. Like it just wasn't the life that I thought. um, Somehow, some way, I ended up very sick. Um, and I was sick. I remember I was sick for about a day or two, and went and got reevaluated. Went back to my therapist, and I didn't die from that. I don't know how I did, to be honest. Um, So it's weird that it was like two times and it didn't work out that way. And so to me, I kind of took that as like, okay, well, there's maybe some reason why I'm actually supposed to be here. What is that reason? Um, but it's hard because I feel like there's days that I go by that I still kind of think about it like, why am I still here? Like, am I I supposed to be here? Am I in my purpose? Am I doing this? Am I doing that? And it's every now and again I get to those dark days, every now and again. But I think it's crazy when you're on the opposite side of it. When um, back in 2020, when my partner at the time, my fiance at the time, passed away from suicide. So it was a different experience, but same emotion. Different experience, same emotion, which is so weird. Um, I'm not really sure how to explain it,
Mm.
honestly. Um,
Did it make you feel differently about, because obviously you were impacted by that? Did
mhm.
it did it draw a line under you thinking that you would ever take your own life, or did it not? Did it not seem to matter?
um, it kind of was like it was kind of like a mirror, I think, where like this is the person that I love, this is the person that I want to spend the rest of my life with, and I just didn't realize how sick he was, um, and how much he was hurting and struggling. Um, and so I felt like in the days leading up to that, I was mirrored every single thing that I had felt. So all the sadness and the grief and the anger, he was mirroring back to me. And so I just kind of was like, that's exactly how I was feeling. That's exactly what I felt. That's exactly how I looked. Like, so it was kind of like a reality check a little bit because it's kind of like, when you're in those particular moments, you don't really see yourself, you know. Um, Everybody else maybe sees you and they just see the outside of, oh, she's okay, she's smiling, she's all right. Where deep down inside, you're really not. And so it was very strange in those particular days leading up to his suicide that he was just mirroring things back to me that I had felt before.
Mm.
Um, so I just, um, and rightfully so, because I think where his mindset was at the time, he had every right to feel those things. Um, the week before his passing, his mother had passed away, and we found her in her room. Um, and that's a whole nother experience in itself. But
Yeah.
I can understand the grief. Um, I haven't lost my mother, so I don't know that part. But I can understand what that grief looks like. I can understand anger. I can understand the pain. I can understand um, the intense emotion and anxiety. And to see those things, I kind of recognize them because I'm just like, that's exactly what I was feeling. That's exactly what I was going through. Um, and I just felt like I was alone. And I think me seeing that's how I was. I was like, okay, well, what can I do, or what have I worked on in these years of therapy and stuff to help him in this particular space that he's in? Which is really difficult to kind of like take yourself out of
Mm.
that, you know. I think that's one thing that I find confusing and interesting at the same time is how people kind of take themselves out of a situation and will put your emotions down and see what someone else is kind of going through, like you're in their shoes and what they're kind of going through. To me, that's always kind of fascinated me. So I think at that particular time, that's what I tried to do. And I thought to myself, like, okay, I've been here before. I see what he's going through. Like, I've been at this abyss before. I've been standing here in this darkness. Like, what would I need at that moment? And so I thought, okay, well, if these are the things that I needed and I see he's doing the same thing, maybe I can give these things to him. um, but it's hard because I feel like it wasn't enough. It just wasn't enough. Um, so yeah, he ended up taking his life on January 20th of 2020. Um, And um, it was interesting because I weird thinking back on it. I kind of had a feeling, but I just wasn't really sure. And now
Hmm.
that it's years later, I saw the details, I saw everything because I went through the same thing, and so I was
Yeah.
relating to that. But yeah, it's hard, I think,
Yeah.
being on both sides of
Yeah.
the coin, I think.
Confusing.
Yeah, it's very confusing. Yeah.
Going back to obviously you had the second attempt. Did you
Mhm.
at that point, you said that you didn't mention it to your mum the first attempt, but did she know about the
No,
second attempt? No,
no,
even though you were in hospital.
no. I did not mention it to her. I um at that time I was away. My mom was in Virginia. I was in Maryland, so we really didn't see much of each other.
Right.
Um, so yeah, that was tough because it was just me and the person I was dating at the time that kind of went through it. Now I wasn't in the hospital too long because they ended up sending me back to my therapist and back to my psychiatrist to reevaluate medication and stuff. And um, yeah, she didn't know. And it's crazy because the only way that she found out is by the book that I just wrote, which is crazy. And
Really?
yeah, and I remember her reading through the book and she um, came to me and told me, she's like, I had no idea that you went through these things. And I said, it's difficult to talk about because I don't know how to explain them. I don't know how to explain to someone like the intricate details of what it's like. I don't know how to explain it. But yeah, I went
Yeah.
through the thing, and she was like, I think at that point she kind of like, I remember her taking a big sigh, and she was like, wow, like I'm so happy that you're still here. She's like, I don't know how to explain this happiness. She's like, I'm just so happy that you're still here. She's like,
Yeah.
because honestly, I don't know what I would have done if I would have found you the first time,
Mm.
you know,
Mm. So
or even the
what's
second time.
yeah.
Yeah.
So what you are still here to tell the tale.
Yes, I'm
So,
still
what has for you been, the biggest, whether it's therapy or just a mindset or whatever, what has enabled you to keep going?
What has enabled me? I think it's a couple of things. One, therapy has been such a huge help. And I feel like a lot of times there's this stigma or like unspoken thing where like only crazy people go to therapy. That's not the case.
I
It's
think we should
totally not the case.
all have therapy.
We should all have therapists. Um, Therapy has been a tremendous help. I mean, I've done years plus 10 plus years of therapy. I've even done a year, almost 2 years of grief therapy. So therapy has been kind of like the backbone and the foundation of everything. Um, Even if it was just to go in there and just talk about my day, it was just one of those places, those safe places where I could verbally communicate, this is what I'm feeling, this is what I'm going through, um, and what can I do to be better? What can I do to get better? What are the things that I need to do? So therapy is number one, down hands down. Two, I think finding something that I love to do um, is huge because now, of course, growing up, there was tons of things that I liked.
Hmm.
Nothing that I really loved. I liked it. I pick it up, put it down.
Hmm.
But now that I've found something that I love to do, which is cooking, and I do that as my job, which is amazing. Um, that has kept me focused. Um, because I always want to get better at it. I always want to learn things about it. Um, and with food, it's kind of like, how can you go wrong with it? Right? So that would be the second thing is finding something you love. Third is one thing that I've learned in grief therapy, most importantly, and I tell this to everybody, is you gotta give yourself grace. Like you gotta be able to have grace and space for yourself to hold multiple emotions. It's okay if I'm angry or if I'm upset or um, sad or happy or feeling joy. Like it's okay to feel those emotions and it's okay to navigate through them. And if my anger that I'm feeling is gonna stay with me for the day, I'm gonna let it stay. I'm not gonna try to get rid of it. I'm not gonna try to argue someone about it. It's just gonna stay with me for the day. That doesn't necessarily mean I have to act on it, but I'm giving myself grace and a little bit of space to hold those emotions. Um, and that's probably been my biggest work, I would say, in the last couple of years is being able to give myself space to hold emotions, but also giving other people the same thing because other people can be going through the same thing as well. I'm not the only person going through things. And so if I at least can offer space to someone else to maybe say what they need to say or talk about their emotions, or talk about how they're feeling, um, maybe that can save them, in their darkest moments. So those three things have been like my biggest go-to, I think, when it comes to dealing with
Yeah. I think the one about finding a purpose, I think is so important, and
yes.
it's no one else can find that for you. It has to
Correct.
be, you've
Correct.
really, and you have to work at it.
Yeah,
You
you
know,
do. You
like you
do.
said, you dabble in this and you try that, and but you've got to find something that ultimately gets you excited.
Hmm. Get you excited, get you so you want to get up and do it every day, you know.
Yeah.
And you never know where that takes you. I mean, my cooking has taken me to places I never thought I would be able to get to. And I kind of look back on it now, like if I would have committed suicide those times and they actually worked, like I never would have got here. I never would have found the thing that I love, you know. Um, it's difficult. I mean, I think at least for me, I have my down days every now and again. Um, but I have a lot of up days too, a lot of good days too. So yeah, yeah,
And so you've got this non-profit
I do.
Cook's Creed. Tell me a bit about that. I mean, I had a good look, and tell the listeners it's really interesting.
Yes, I'm super excited. So I actually, from my partner passing away in 2020 from suicide, we had previously been talking about something we could do or a platform we could put together for chefs because chefs and hospitality people, we need a number of things going through our journey. We need money, we need we need something for our wellness, well-being. We need people that have been in these spaces that know what it is to build a business, what it is to build a restaurant. Um, so that's kind of where it kind of came about. And so when he passed away, I kind of felt like I wanted to carry on that idea, that kind of mindset. And so Cook Creed was kind of born out of, I don't want to say tragedy, but born out of that pretty much. And so basically, we help chefs and anybody in the hospitality industry get scholarships, mental health and substance abuse resources, and mentorship. And so it it's definitely been a ride because it's one of those things that in the industry, people don't really want to talk about what happens in the kitchen. They don't want to talk about their work environment. They don't want to talk about the low pay. They don't want to talk about they don't have no life at home and they can't give their kids. And sometimes they don't want to talk about it. And so
Yeah.
this is one of those organizations where we're going to talk about it. We're going to start these hard conversations and we are going to go head first into what is happening in the kitchen and what's happening in our industry. Um, so this past April, we just hit 4 years, which is amazing. And I actually just published my first book, June 30th, which is about mental health for chefs and hospitality. And so I'm super excited because it's weird how it comes back full circle because I had my own mental things that I was going on and dealing with suicide and all of that to now I'm an advocate for it. Like let's talk about our mental health. Let's talk about these dark, deep feelings that you're having. Let's talk about what it's like to stand at that darkness and there's nobody there to help you. Let's talk about those things. Um, and so that's
Exactly.
kind of that's kind of what I talk about in the book. Um, I also volunteer with the American Federation of Suicide Prevention, which is amazing. Um, and so it it's really kind of like a full circle moment because I know what it's like to stand there and be ready for the emptiness is what it feels like. I know what that feels like. But to be on
Yeah.
the opposite side to that and kind of know like, okay, I've been there. Let me try to help
Yeah.
one person at that place.
And that's what's so key to all of this and the Suicide Sucks podcast, really. It's about talking and listening to people that have been stood where you are standing,
Yeah,
and it's because sometimes therapy isn't for everyone because
correct,
that person hasn't experienced what you've experienced. So
correct.
it is fantastic to hear
Thank
that
you.
also there's this kind of um narrowing in and focusing on specific careers and like um I don't know how to put it really, but like there's groups for veterans now that are
Yeah,
suffering with suicide and it's
correct.
becoming a lot more where you're talking with people that are of they're like-minded, that
Hmm.
they've experienced similar camaraderie or whatever, and I think that's so much better for people
Yeah, I
to be
agree.
able to open that discussion.
I agree. I definitely agree. That was one thing I felt in grief therapy that really helped a lot is I was in a group with other people that have had a suicide loss. And so I was able to connect with other people that had the same feelings I was feeling, the same things that I was going through, the same things I was thinking. And I think that's one thing that's important is to know that you're kind of not alone because it's such a lonely place, I think, to be. Um, and it hurts.
Absolutely.
Yeah, it hurts to be
Absolutely.
lonely in
And
that
do you know what, Keisha? That is the perfect place to end on the fact
moment.
that you are not alone.
You're not alone.
To all of those listeners out there, you are
Yeah, you're
not
not alone.
alone.
You're not alone.
Keisha, thank you so much for talking to me today.
Oh, you're
And
welcome. Thank you.
it's been really lovely to meet you.
Nice to meet you as well. Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
It starts with an itch and a tingle, and then it builds and expands. And suddenly, all at once, my legs won't let me stand. I scratch till my fingers go numb.